Hey everybody, it's Chris Murphy, U.S. Senator from Connecticut. Thank you to the Yale University School of Music for the symposium that you're putting on. This is a really important topic. As the father of two boys in the public schools, I know that we have to be educating the whole child. And arts education is part of that mission. I also know that we have to have kids that are excited to learn every day. And some of the times that my middle schooler is most excited is when he's sitting at his computer composing a piece of music for his music class. It energizes him and it helps keep him focused on everything else he's doing in school. So I really am looking forward to hear what you put together in this symposium. I'm really excited to introduce Deputy Secretary of Education Cindy Marten. I got the chance to know her over the course of her confirmation process. I'm excited that she's on the job. Actually, our first meeting, I saw her eyes light up when I talked about my project to try to give kids access to enriching summer programming this year. My belief was that summer school might not work for every kid, that we need to give kids psychologically healthy, enriching experiences this summer to reset their brains. And in my mind, access to music and music programming was and is a big part of what we should be providing kids this summer. Her eyes lit up because she was in the middle of putting together this similar kind of program in the San Diego Unified School District. So her years as a superintendent, her years running schools, she knows the importance of music education. She knows the importance of educating the whole child. She knows the importance of social, emotional health. And I think that's why she agreed to be a part of this symposium today. So as lucky as I feel to represent New Haven and Yale and all of the work that you do, I also feel very lucky to have Deputy Secretary Marten as a partner here in Washington, and I'm glad that she's joining you today.
Well, hello, Deputy Secretary Marten. It's so nice of you to be here today. We're so happy to see you.
Thank you so much. Please call me Cindy.
Thank you, Cindy, and please call me Michael then, as you should.
Absolutely. Thank
you. I'm hopeful that your time here at our symposium will light up your eyes like Secretary Murphy described when you met with him. I'm sure it's been a whirlwind time. You've been on the job for not too long yet. I'm glad to know you're in Washington and working for all the best interests of reopening school. How's the transition been? And, what have your priorities been since your confirmation in mid-May?
Well, thank you. And it was nice to hear from the senator. He definitely did see my eyes light up, and that was authentic. It's really who I am. And this transition has been just so amazing. I mean, try to imagine what it would be like moving from San Diego to DC and just jump right into all of this. And I just have to say, I'm truly thrilled to be here. And when I got the request to join you, it was an immediate yes, because I get to talk about what I love with people who are doing this great work. I always say, if you want to know what works, ask the people in the field doing the work. And so what I'll say is, in the past month or so, my job title has definitely changed. If you look at a business card, it's got something different on it now, but the work has not changed. And I always have believed that. I'm a teacher at heart. People ask me what I do for a living on my plane ride over here. Oh, what do you do for a living? I say, I'm a teacher. I'm still a teacher. We might play different roles. We have different jobs, but the work doesn't change. And the work is my focus on our children. And I just get to serve more children now than I did when I was a classroom teacher. I taught kindergarten and second grade, and then as a principal, and then 8 years as superintendent. But we do, you said, what are my priorities? We do have very clear kind of urgent priorities that we need to stay focused on. And number one is to ensure that 100% of our schools are open in person in the fall. That's clear and that's important. The second one is that the reopening is safe and that it's done thoughtfully with the needs of students of all children in mind, and especially some of our kids that have experienced some of the most difficult, challenging losses and disparities that have been highlighted by this pandemic. And that's a second priority for us. And the third is that it's critical that the funding through the American Rescue Plan goes out the door to support the initiatives that we need for a safe reopening. So those are kind of top of mind for me, but I always make the difference between our job and our work, and the work is the same. Let's serve our children and do that at the highest level possible.
Yes. Well, it's interesting. That one of the things we're talking about is the money coming from the feds to the states to local, and the impact it could have, for music, which of course is why we're all here today. A core principle for us is that every student deserves access to an active music life, including in-school music education taught by a certified music teacher. Like most folks with us today, I would argue that active music programs are one of the best ways to get children in school and motivated about learning. Has that been your experience in San Diego? And would you advise schools across the country that music is an important way to get kids happy and back to school? That's a leading question, huh?
Yes, of course. Well, when I was a principal at an inner city school I was 10 years at a school with 100% poverty, 85% English learners, 1,000 students on that campus. And I knew the importance of integrating the arts and having a robust arts education. And then as superintendent, what I tried to do was always provide a space where our principals and our site leaders could be supportive of the whole child. So as a leader, we have to put forth those messages that a whole child approach is really what's most important. So we have to look beyond, there's curriculum and there's test scores, those things matter. But if you're not paying attention to the whole child, then you're not actually serving. Our goal is to produce students who are actively literate, contributing members of society. And that happens through the right kinds of investment and kinds of programs that we see. Like, let me up talking to the senator, I see children light up when they have experienced, really well-trained teachers that know how to do this. And what I learn is I go into music classes myself. I always say, people ask me, what do I play, what music or instrument? I'm a consumer of the arts. I'm not a producer of the arts, but I see how the arts change lives. And often during this pandemic, I've said, there was a quote by Mo Willems that said, science is going to get us out of this, but the arts will get us through this. And so what I got was a sense of how music can inspire students. And I got that sense by going into the music classrooms. I can talk about a teacher in San Diego Unified, Jean Christensen, is one of our high school teachers at Mira Mesa High School. And she had this beautiful marching band. She competed. She was actually invited to go to the Rose Parade. I got to do that. I think she's going again this year. You can watch the 2022 Rose Parade with Mira Mesa High School in their color guard because they're going to be involved in that. So we saw arts infused across the whole district in San Diego Unified when I was there. And then we also have to give a shout out to Russ Sperling and Ann. I know Ann is watching. I think Russ is watching as well. They're really the glue that made it all happen. We have a 5-year strategic plan. Unfortunately, because of funding, that plan had to turn into a 7-year plan. And here we have with this investment, maybe the district, I'm no longer there, but they can actually speed that up. But all I can say is that every district needs to have the arts be a part of the district spending plan. It's not an afterthought. It's not a side thought. It's not something you do once you put the curriculum together. It's got to be infused all the way throughout, and it's got to be part of your budget planning process.
Well, it leads to my next thought about this. What advice can you give to us? It is true that as a field, we feel like we are still struggling to get the presence of music in every school. And after all, the whole concept of equity and access is based on not just suburban affluent school districts having arts and music and having a well-rounded curriculum, but everyone. So do you have some advice for us about, in this new world with all the money flowing in, how can we make the best case for the role of music in the public schools?
Well, at the end of the day, I think people should talk about their own lived experiences. And there are examples across the country of how music truly has transformed lives. And to deliver on the hope and promise of public education across our fine nation and leave the arts out is actually leaving out one of the most important things that keep children engaged. And we talk about recovering from this pandemic, and we understand the social emotional aspect or toll that this has taken on families and communities. And arts are a way to connect students back to school. And sometimes it's the one thing that actually lights them up and gets them excited. And their music education and the way you integrate it is just so critical. And I think you find programs where that happens. My first teaching experience as a baby young teacher was at a private school. And I saw the investment in the arts there. And this is what led me on this path. I wondered, why wasn't that in every school? And when I left 7 years teaching at that small private school, then I went to a suburban district and there was a little bit of arts. And then when I came to an urban district, the arts were gone. And I didn't understand it. And so you're asking, how do we do this? Well, look to where it's working. I use an approach called Appreciative Inquiry. And what that means is what you appreciate appreciates. If you pay attention to what's not working, you get more of what's not working. So instead of shining the spotlight on all the places where it's not going well and it's not the vision you want to create, find where it's working. I had the experience both as a student and as a teacher of what the arts can do to transform lives when it's fully integrated. So then when I showed up at a place where it wasn't there, I asked the questions and then I found the path. And because I believe that your demography doesn't determine your destiny and it's not your zip code that's going to determine your outcomes, why was I showing up in an inner city school as a teacher and seeing lack of the arts? And I asked the question and I said, well, what will it take? So we need to make long-term investments. This infusion of money right now is important, but what are the long-term investments? Are you going to buy instruments? Are you going to hire excellent teachers? Are you going to create institutional long-term support for these programs? Not a flash in the pan, not a here's a fun thing to do for the arts, but really classical arts that's really long-term investment. So I would say as we move forward, how do you make this happen? Find where it's going well, both in private, multiple settings across the country, and how did they do it, and replicate that.
So Cindy, that gives us an opportunity to say that I hope everyone will put their stories on the chat today, because in order to create the work that we're going to do at Yale to create a policy statement about this idea of music learning ecosystems, we need to know what's happening. We need to know the best stories. So everyone, please light up the group chat and let us know what you're doing, and let us know after as well. That'll be really, really, really important. Let me go on to a sort of second area. The concept of an ecosystem is to encourage all of us to create and expand music learning ecosystem in each community. And so the ecosystem model assumes a strong music program in the schools, but it also assumes community partners and who work closely together to ensure equity and access music for all students. How does that idea resonate with you? Public-private partnerships, working with arts organizations who can seek philanthropic support to do additional programs that expand what exists, not replace, but expand what happens in the public schools. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I think that there's always a path to bring in outside entities, public-private partnerships, and other people that want to work with you, but you have to be clear about your goals. And the school systems have to be clear on what are the goals. That's why when San Diego Unified under Russ Sperling's leadership developed our 7-year plan, and 5-year turned into 7-year plan, when money comes in or partnerships come in, the money's not coming in to do something to us or for us, or the public-private partnerships aren't coming in with their program, dropping it down on us saying, we have the answer, do this, and here's the money that comes to it. No, we actually have a vision for the arts, and we have a vision how to fully integrate the arts throughout a student's educational experience from preschool all the way through when they graduate from our system. And it's this long-standing investment when the public, they happen in service of the district's goals and missions, and not the other way around. And what I say to organizations that want to help with the arts, first of all, people like to use this idea that schools aren't investing in the arts, and so they go off fundraising saying that the arts have been cut in schools, and they raise money to put the arts back in. I think it's important that when I said earlier the district plans need to include the arts, we're not going to stand for the arts have been cut. We're not cutting the arts. You're going to understand as a public-private partnership, what is the district trying to accomplish in terms of the arts, and how do we leverage our resources and our goals that match yours, or that help add power to what you're already endeavoring to do on behalf of children. And we have to remember the context that we're working in right now is we're dealing with two traumas: a pandemic that's disproportionately impacted our Black and Brown communities, and this long overdue racial reckoning, and it's imposing additional trauma on the very same populations. So as organizations are working to solve those two traumas, then put it on top of the health disparities that we see, we have compounded the inequities that have persisted for generations. And so we know, for example, that schools that have 90% or more of students of color spend $733 less per student per year than schools with 90% or more white students. So that means there's less access to engaging high quality learning opportunities in the after school and the enrichment programs. They're just not happening. And these disparities that have been highlighted, unfortunately, in a bad way during this pandemic, it means we've got to address that now and interrupt those disparities. And a lot of times those play out in the arts. Less spending means the arts get relegated to, we don't have money for that. And that's not okay, because less access to what we know is the high engaging, high quality learning opportunities is what matters most for our kids.
We've always said, as partners to the New Haven School District, I mean, our first effort is to ensure that every school has a full-time certified music teacher, and we're lucky in New Haven to have that. And I think it's a model we'd like to see across the country. I think, the concept of the ecosystem is that everyone understands each other, right? Everyone works together, which is harder to do, by the way, than each little entity working on itself, or for that matter, the district working completely by itself when there are other programs happening in the community. So it's, there's no question it's more complicated to build an ecosystem than it is to just sort of go off and start your little program or work independently in the school district. But in the end, it's so much more important to getting that true plan, as you described in San Diego, and would be true in any city, whether it's a small community in rural America or one of our great American cities. So I think
I like that you call it an ecosystem, because that really does, if you understand the science of ecosystems, it really does show we've got to work. There should be symbiotic. There should be a synergy that comes from these relationships, and an outside entity driving the mission all in and of itself, or a district driving a mission in and of itself. You can't be separate. You've got to be to work together. And the district should drive I would recommend districts spend time and maybe resources investing in a strategic plan. Don't just pop down something and say, here, let's pay for this, pay for this, pay for this. To what end? What are you trying to accomplish in your own community, and what partners will you bring alongside you as you do it?
Yeah, and of course, that does bring us to the topic of your department, which you've been at for a long time now. But there's no question, thanks to the Biden administration and Congress for passing our recent, there is going to be a lot of money flowing into local school districts. And, I think it's really important to understand, we'd like to see that the arts will play a significant role in that. And that, in whether it's after school programming, whether it's summer programming, as Senator Murphy talked about, whatever it is, we'd like to make sure that the arts has a place in that. What do you think we can do to assure that? Is there anything in the language? Is there anything in the sense of how we politic this? Let's be direct and honest about that.
Well, listen, as a teacher for many years and a principal and then a superintendent, I can't tell you how many times I've been at a table like this, making tough budget decisions around what to cut. And I would say, we could do X, Y, or Z for students only if we had the funding to do it, only if we had the political support, only if we have the urgency. It was this if only way of leading schools for so many years. Now, districts and schools across the country have all these things that we've been wishing for. And this American Rescue Plan provides $130 billion, not only to reopen K-12 schools safely, but inside there, it also says to address social, emotional, mental health, and academic needs of all students and staff. And you, of all people, Michael, you have the research to show how music and the arts, and the president of your university, in fact, talks about emotional intelligence, and how when you do emotional intelligence, the arts are deeply connected to that. Our data tells part of the story, but it's really our story that matters. And I want people to know the work can start now. Communities all over the country are already using this emergency funding to create the enriching summer programming, and they're trying to stop the learning loss or the unfinished learning. But that's really geared to help students fall in love with learning again. And we might be biased on this call, but how else you fall in love with learning if you don't include the arts in it? The arts I saw what the arts did at Central Elementary when we used our Title I dollars to have a dance program tied to our literacy program. So we achieved our literacy academic outcomes by fully integrating the arts to that. So for some students, the way they fall back in love with learning again in school again, it might come in the form of learning to play an instrument or being a part of a choir. Those are the things that actually will re-engage students' hearts and minds. And in the fall, these funds are going to be used to bring in high-quality teachers, expand programs in the music and the arts, languages, and more. So it's our job to create these opportunities so we can institutionalize the high-quality programs, attract the high-quality teachers, and redefine the core of what it means to educate a child in our country. The core of educating a child isn't only reading, writing, and math. The core education is the whole child. Students and teachers are not going to go back. People say that you want to go back, get a sense of normalcy. Go back to get back to normal. No, we're building back better. Our president could not be more clear. This is investment to build back better, and in building back better, redefine the arts as a core to what a public education can and will deliver for our nation's youth.
Well, I hope we'll be able to communicate with you further in our field to make this point, because it seems obvious to a lot of people who are in the music world that you walk into a school and there's an active music program. You go to an after-school program at a community center or an arts organization. You just see the kids incredibly engaged in that. Even in the after-school programs, even at the end of a long school day, the music is giving us that opportunity. We have one more question, and I know you're on a tight schedule. We're just so thrilled that you could be here with us today, that we really appreciate it. But one more thing, and I think this is an important one, and it's important for everyone watching today to sort of think about what we're going to do long term, because we talked about the ecosystem taking time. We talk about planning. So the money from the feds is going to run out, right? It's at some point, 2 or 3 years, right? How do we ensure the sustainability of these music programs? I mean, you as a superintendent longstanding, you said earlier that, you want to have programs that are sustainable and continue. How do we make sure that if we can get activities for music in the short term, how do we ensure that they're a permanent, or how shall I say, chauvinistically, even central part of every child's experience?
It's so important to go back to what the values are that make this happen. And when I think about every decision I made as a superintendent, I always used to say, is what we're doing, is it sustainable? Is it scalable? Is it replicable? Is it systemic? And is it systematic? And are we doing it in an equitable fashion? And so when you make an investment, like the investment we're seeing now, this is a once in a lifetime, once in a generation opportunity. How do we make this investment in a way, like you're saying, make it sustainable? Our president has said that he's using a whole of government approach to improving the outcomes for our students and families. So when you do these at the beginning, short-term investment in San Diego Unified, when we built the summer school program that is now underway as we speak, the board's vision is that this first 3 years of this is to build something that will last and be a highly fundable strategy that we've actually used this investment to prove the outcomes. And then the community will get behind it to keep it going forevermore. So the board, when they voted to commit to this, and arts are a big part of it, they knew that this was a down payment on our future. And once you put a program like this in place and you see what it does for children, there's no way to stop it. It will continue to go. And I do think it's important for fine institutions like yours to write up what we've been doing. Some people, not on this call, because we're all artists and musicians on this call, but there are people in this world that need to see it to believe it. And there are other people that can believe something into being. We that understand the space of arts education in a robust public school system, we're believing something into being. We need the researchers to write up what it's done. When San Diego Unified got studied by the Learning Policy Institute and by UCLA around becoming a positive outlier, beating the odds district, we were busy delivering for children and closing long-standing achievement gaps. And it got noticed and it got written up by outside entities saying, here's what they did. When we used our Title I funding to do something that had never been done before, invest in the arts in a way that never had been done before, it got written up and noticed and understood, so then it could become replicable. So we need inside outside, but we need to make this an opportunity that will last. And I think to truly move the needle on on education, to get every student what we say, get every student what they need, when they need it, in the way that they need it, means all of us saying, what is the importance of this moment? How we use these dollars to do something, not as a flash in the pan, but as a permanent change for education, because it's what our children deserve.
Well, that's what we're going to try to do in our symposium today and the work we do after. And all the people on this Zoom, that's not Zoom, on this symposium for the day will be spending time thinking about this. Deputy Secretary Cindy Marten, I know you have to move on to your next activity. We would love to have you here all afternoon, but thank you so much for answering our questions, and thank you so much for being here and supporting music.
It was an honor to have been asked and to participate, and I'm a great fan and admirer of the fine work you do. Thank you so much for letting me participate today.